Good morning, everybody. My name is Samantha Mirabal with Melco's application team, and we're doing our design shop talk again today. We try to do these on a weekly basis for you to see what questions you have and get them answered. If you do have questions, please type them in. We're live on both Facebook and YouTube, so you can type them in on the comments. Don't send them privately. I don't see those. I'm here by myself, so I can see the comments and I try to review them. I do have a secondary monitor here, so I try to keep an eye on them as we're live. So if you have questions, please feel free to chime in and we'll see what we have. So I did get quite a few questions that were sent in ahead of time. So I'll start on those and we'll kind of go from there. Again, this is kind of just a high overview over some of the questions that were asked. Things like removing stitches from designs. What's the difference between some of the commands you have when you're setting up colors? Where do I even start? I'm new to this, so those sorts of things. So these are some of the ones I know ahead of time, see what else we can add. All right, so this one was interesting. How do you remove false stitches that are created when saving a file as passed? So a lot of times I noticed this as well when I first started working with different file types. Some of them have a return to origin command that when whatever software it was created, that when it returns to origin, it actually puts a stitch there. So what you end up with is this annoying little stitch right in the middle of the design, right at the end of the file, or it might be right at the beginning. So you'll do a few stitches and then it'll go off, it'll sew your design and it'll all be happy. But in reality, you don't want those stitches. So what do you do about that? So let's go over to DesignShop and let's see. Let me go find, basically what you're going to do is an expanded file modification. So let me go grab a file. Webinars, let's go up to, let's see if I've got one in here. All right. Yeah, okay. So this doesn't necessarily, it was a Jeff file, so it doesn't have that weird stitch, but you can still, I'd still be able to show you how you'd remove these. So you see these little dash lines here? Good morning on YouTube, hi. So these dash lines are those kind of travel stitches, and often with the PES or with any of them, you might have a stitch at the beginning. So what you can do is select your element. If you come over to the Stitch tab on the right-hand side here, so if I go to Stitch tab, you'll see that there's these jump things. So I can go through and select the first one, hold my Shift key down, select down to the other, and hit delete, and now all those are gone. So of course you can, another way you can do this is right here you have expanded editing. So you can go find these things by clicking on them and just deleting them. So again, how I do that, I select my element, I turn on the expanded point editing, click on the stitch that you want to get rid of and hit delete. Okay, so that's one way. Like I said, I don't enjoy doing that. I'd rather do it over here where I select my element, come to the Stitch tab, because then I can just hold my shift key down, click on the first one, click on the last one, and hit delete. And voila, all gone. Okay. Good morning, Gabby. All right, so that's how you would get rid of those stitches. You'd locate them and just hit delete. Was the issue with the bean stitch length fixed? That's a specific question. I don't believe the service pack has come out yet, and so it wouldn't be fixed right now. Next question we had sent in was, I have the latest version of the OS for the XTS, which would be, depending if you're running version 11 or 10. But when I choose pause when I'm setting up my colors on the machine, it's pausing every color change. That's what pause does. So pause is actually a pause after every color change where you have to go over to the machine and hit start again. If you only want it to stop between, let's say you've got 5 colors and you want it to stop just between color 2 and 3. Okay, you wouldn't use the command pause, you would use the command hold or applique. All right, hold is wherever it comes on hold, it will stop. Yeah, so you would do hold. Sorry, the question just came in. So hold would put a stop right there, or you can use applique. What an applique step does is when you hit applique, again, the machine will stop, but applique brings the pantograph out from under the needle case so that you can work on it. Okay. Typically, I use applique for almost everything I do, with the exception of when I'm working on puff. When I'm working on puff, I use hold. Okay. So I go and remove. So the question was back to that false stitches. You go remove it. When you resave it, the return to origin stitch reappears. Well, you wouldn't save it as a PES, you would save it as an OFM. And when you save it as an OFM, it wouldn't, it's gone. You would have had deleted it, so it wouldn't be there anymore. Okay. All right. Is there a system of what order to watch training videos in to get the most benefit for a newbie? All right, so let me, all right. So go to melcouniversity.com. This is where I would suggest starting. So go to Melco University, click on the media tab. And when you do that, you've got a bunch of playlists here. Okay, so you've got, if you're wanting to learn how to digitize, this is the playlist. Start at the top and work your way down. So there's videos, you just watch all of them. And that's kind of the order that you'd want to learn the DesignShop software in. So that's settings on their machines then. So when you save it out, the return to origin is always going to be there based on the different formats. That's a protocol part of that. So the machines, it's settings on the different machines. Let's see. So again, if you're wanting to learn how to use the actual OS, so how to run the equipment, you've got these, setting up to sew. So these are the different videos for that. And then of course we have all our live sessions between the lives and that are done on a weekly basis, the DesignShop Talks and things like that. And those will take you to the YouTube playlists, I believe. So that's where I would start. Go to Melco University, click on Media, and start at the top and work your way down. Okay. Well, let's see. What else do we have? Another person said, okay, I have a PC and I've downloaded stuff. Now what? Again, start at Melco University. If you're using a PC, so you're good. If you're using Mac, Mike Doe actually did a video on how to use, I'm not a Mac person, how to use, I don't know, whatever the Windows simulator is within Mac. Sorry about that. There's a video up on the Melco YouTube that Mike Doe did that will show you how to use a Mac. All right. Okay, let's see. What else do we have? Nothing there. Nothing there. All right. So how do you use TTFs to do applique? So not all TTFs are going to be applique suitable, right? Yeah, parallels. There you go. So the person, that's the Mac. Sorry, I'm not a Mac user. So Mike Doe did a video on how to use parallels to be able to install and use it. All right. So when you're doing applique, particularly with true type fonts and things like that, you really thin things are not well suited to applique in general, right? So you want to make sure the font that you're trying to use is actually well suited for it. So this is not a true type font. Let's go find one. Maybe Impact. Impact is wide, so that might be one that's suitable. All right, so let's say this is what I want to do as an applique, and it's going to be, you know, pretty wide and pretty tall, so something that would actually work as an applique. All right, so what do? Clearly, I don't want to sew it like this, but I want to use this true type font to create my file. All right, so what you would want to do is type out whatever you want, and then from there, I'm going to go, why don't we convert it? So I'm going to go change element type, vector fill, and I'm just going to replace it. All right, so now I have my text as art, and now I can go ahead and quickly create my applique. So what you're going to want to do is select your element and hold the control key down, or you can use the change element from one type to another. I'm just going to hold the shift key, not control. So shift is add, control is replace. So I'm going to do shift and there. Now I've got a placement, and I'm going to do that for each of these. So I select the vector, hold shift, click, and now if I turn off the vector, you'll see I've got applique, or I've got placement stitches. So now it's just a matter of copy and paste and adding satin stitches and things like that, right? So I can take all of these, I can duplicate them. So I've got my placement, my tack down, I can right click and duplicate again. And this time select them, hold control. So control again is to replace. So I want to take these walk stitches and turn them into zigzags. So I'm going to hold control and click on that single line. Change the width to something bigger, say 30, and tackle. All right, so now I've got a tackle stitch. To hold it all down, now I can again copy and paste that. And let's make this, instead of tackle, we're going to make that satin. And again, make it wider. Okay, so it's pretty quick and easy to use whatever you want to create it. Now, you just got to keep in mind make sure it's suitable for appliques. Really thin things just don't make a lot of sense. Now, another way you could use this is to take, so if I turn all these off, so let's turn, that's doing it manually, right? Well, we also have the applique tool available. So if I take this thing and again say change element from one type to another and say applique, and this time I'm going to say add, poof, applique is done. Now I just got to go modify the properties for that to make it worthy, to whatever your personal standards are for how wide you like your satin stitches. If you're doing a tackle where you just want the zigzag, any of that. Okay. So that uses, like I said, that was just using the impact font. Okay. Now, if you use this, you can also file save applique outline, and it'll save the outline off where you can use it on a laser or one of the print and cuts or whatever you want to use. Okay. All right. So what other questions? Where are the compensation settings to choose your fabric type, to adjust lettering to sew out evenly in version 11? Okay. So let's go make some lettering. We have some lettering. I'm going to go to properties. And if you go look at under styles, you've got different fabric styles here. Okay, so you can choose the different fabric style you want. You can create your own, which you can see I've got testing. That's when I was showing someone how to do it, and ties and underlays when I just want to change all the underlays and ties to some standards I like. So I set up a few that I enjoy, but you can use that. Okay, so that's one option. And actually, that's where I would do it. As I say, you can always use auto and things like that. But for your pull compensation, I'll say I would recommend using these styles. And then for a lettering, I always put an offset of at least 1 point on everything. If you're doing small lettering and things like that, this lettering comp is awesome. It's new to version 11, and it works really well. I highly recommend turning that on as well. So, putting a little bit of offset on all your lettering and then turning on the lettering comp is pretty perfect. Okay. So, yeah, I put at least 1 point of offset. If it's a really thin font, I'll usually do 2. All right, so let's see. I'm still too chicken to do puff designs. Don't be. So we've got a bunch of videos that we'll see if we can get you the links to how to do puff. There are some sample designs up on the FAQ site. So if you don't want to either learn to digitize, let me back up. It's a good idea to learn on a known good file. So why not use those files and try them out and learn how to do puff in an easy way, right? That way you're not sitting there going, well, is it the file? Is it my settings? What? So go ahead and check out those. There's several that are up there on the FAQ site, and don't be scared of it. Short of banging into hoops, there's really, it's just fun. It's fun. So there are some tricks you can use with puff. Don't stick your fingers under machines. Use your handy chopsticks. Tape, painter's tape is fantastic. You can use rubber bands. Mike Doe had a video or tips and tricks. He showed how to use a rubber band to hold puff down onto a hat. So you can use that. But it's all pretty easy. So don't be scared. Try it, ask questions, and we'll see what we can do for you, how we can help you. If you are looking for something a little different in the videos, let us know. Okay. Another question we had is, can I talk about embroidering on a leather dog collar? So dog collars, whether leather or nylon, are thicker, right? So it's a thicker material. So when you're doing, there is a video out there on doing embroidery on karate belts. So it's similar considerations when you're doing that. Right, you're going to want to use a sharp needle. You're going to want to increase your active feed, right, because it's thicker. So if you have your active feed really tight, it's going to be trying to pull too tight for the material thickness. So you have to increase your active feed number so that you have more thread to form the stitch. Okay, so making sure your active feed number is high enough is important. Using a sharp or leather needle is also helpful, but you don't want to have your density, depending on the type of leather. If you're doing it pre-construction or after, you want to make sure your density is appropriate so you're not actually creating a punch-out patch, because remember, leather is a hide, right? So if you put the stitches way too close together, you risk having it deal like a punch-out. Okay, so that's more something you consider if you're embroidering the raw hide versus a finished item. So, but it really comes down to selecting the right needle and increasing your active feed. And I would only use polyester thread personally. I wouldn't even try to do rayon just because it's already a thick, aggressive material, and the rayon is a weaker thread. So I wouldn't do it. I would just do polyester. Okay. So does that help any? There's not a whole lot to it. Just increase your active feed and make sure it's hooped appropriately. When purchasing a design, I find it hard to open them. So I know when I purchase designs, a lot of times they come as zip files. So if you're trying to open them as zipped files, that might be part of it. So you'd want to make sure you're extracting them. And that's a Windows thing. That's not a Melco thing. But if you're talking about working on the OS, all right, so the OS is what's running the machines. On those, you're going to load the design to the machine. So file load. If you go in the OS and open it, it's going to try to send it to the DesignShop. Okay, so I always think of it, I want to load it onto the machine. Okay, in DesignShop, you just open the file and it should open anything. I think the only time I've ever seen weird things happen is when I'm trying to open things that are zipped up. So I would just recommend making sure you're extracting your files before using them. Okay, let's see. Anything on YouTube? Nope. Facebook? Not yet. Okay, cool. In the hoop designs, in the hoop embroidery is some of my favorite stuff to do. So let's see. short of doing a project for you, I'm not quite sure how to just to show you. I know we have some videos. I did in the hoop masks a while back. We did some key fobs that were in the hoop. We've got some videos for that. I'm trying to think other ones that we might have done. But basically what in the hoop embroidery is, you're going to want to use the applique stop quite often, because you're basically building an entire item in the hoop, right? So like you're building a bag. So for instance, if I want to put a zipper down, I would need to know the size of the zipper, right? So let's say the zipper is 1.25 inches tall. So I would embroider a rectangle so that I have a placement, so I can go grab my zipper, lay it down, tape it in place, and then I can use a running stitch to sew it down. So 1, 2, you know, catch it on the edges to hold it down, or to sew fabric to it. So depending on what the project is that you're trying to do, it's going to be constructed differently. So if you've got a specific project in the hoop that you want to look at, let us know. You know, I make in the hoop files all the time. Like I said, I love it. So if there's something you want to look at, let us know and we'll see about making a file for you. We do have a link that we are putting in the comments of an example for in the hoop, so you'll have that. But it boils down to how you're going to do it, and you just digitize it step by step to build up what you're looking for. Okay. Let's see, any other questions so far? Nope. All right. Oh. All right, if we have an EMT 16 hooked to an Amaya, how do we send a different job to each? Okay, so when you have multiple machines hooked, the embroidery machines hooked to one OS, you'll have a list on the left-hand side that shows you the machine. So you'll have, you know, serial number 1, serial number 2, whatever it is. So you'll have a list of machines. So all you would do is click on the machine you want it to send to. Or if you're at the physical machine and you are going, I want it to come to this machine, you can hold the bullseye on the machine until the software on the computer focuses to that machine. So then you know that's the machine that the software is focused on. So then you do file, load, design, and load it to that machine. It's whatever one it's focused on. Now, if you're sending it from DesignShop, when you do, you know, send a machine, it'll actually bring up a list that says, do you want it to go to serial number 1 or serial number 2? Okay, so when it goes to the OS, you'll have a little pop-up that says, which machine do you want this to go to? Now, if it's loading to all machines at once, that just means you have both selected. So you can load, like I said, I have 13 machines out there, and I could actually highlight on my list of machines, multiple machines, and then say, all right, for these 5 machines, highlight them all and then send them design, and it will go to all 5 machines at once. I don't have to do it individually. So that can save you some time. But if I only want it to go to one, I just click on one of them. Okay. Oh, how can I digitize curve fills, ripple fills? Okay, so I did this as an example, and I actually wasn't sure if I'd have time on the live to be able to do this from scratch. So I actually recorded a video that I sent over to the guys to see if they wanted to upload that later on me just creating this from scratch. Okay, so ripple designs, basically it's curved stitch directions is really what we're looking at, right? So rather than this just being a fill with straight lines going from one side to the other, you can see how I have them arched. Okay, so how did I do this? Well, first off, I drew some bad art and you can see it's not exactly pretty, but hey, I just wanted something to be able to trace. So these are just vectors that I drew using literally that thing right there, the vector input, just so I'd have something to look at and kind of stage what I'm going to work on. So from here, now we can actually go create our fills. So if I want to create it from scratch, right, I can trace it. So if I'm doing that, I'm going to just really roughly eyeball this just so you can see. So I clicked on the complex fill, I traced it, hit enter to close my shape. You'll notice my little cursor has a little floating circle to the bottom right. That's my visual cue of what it wants next. I can also look at the bottom of the screen. It's input hole. Well, I don't have any hole in this thing, so you'll see at the bottom it says input hole, or hit enter to go to your entry point. Okay, so enter. So now I got to give it a start point, a stop point, and now a stitch direction. Now this is where we want to make it a curved stitch direction, right? So I'm going to hold this guy down, and right there is my insert curved stitch direction. So now, that's not going to be pretty, but now I can give it a curved stitch direction. Okay, so if I turn that on 3D, and I don't want it to be a solid fill, so I'm going to double click on that. I'm going to go make this something bigger. Let's turn that off and look at it. All right, so we made it bigger. Let's turn off all this underlay. Okay, so now it's just a matter of playing with it until you get it to look like what you want it to look like. That's cute. So can you change a straight stitch direction line to a curved without removing it? So now I have a straight stitch direction line. If I add a point to it, which is what I just did there. All right, so let me back up. What did I do? So that's got a straight stitch direction line. Then I came over, I selected my shape because I want to edit it. I'm going to click on Insert Stitch Direction. I'm going to add a point. And now I can hold my Control key, or I can just move this around. If I use Control, it'll do it as a nice arc. So yes, you absolutely can modify it. All right. I'm going to go with that. So the other thing I want to change are these little triangle points. I want them to be straight lines, so I'm going to go turn on Trapunto. Okay, cool. So now I've got a curved stitch direction. So I'm going to take this guy, copy, paste, mirror, and move it over. You can tell it doesn't exactly match the other art because I drew it poorly last time. All right. So if I again turn off the art so you can see it, now we've got two. So I'm going to copy again, paste, and I'm going to select it. I want to rotate this one up to fill this space. But if I try to rotate it now, you'll see it's rotating about the center. I don't want to do that. All right, so I'm going to take this rotation point. Oops, undo. Got to click on it first. All right, and now move it down here. So now when I rotate, it rotates on the center. So now I can stretch this guy around, move it around. I'm just going to move my points now. Cute. I'll make it a little taller. I like that better. Okay. So that's all right. Cool. Okay, so now I have kind of a fan. I don't like this. Sorry. I am wanting it to look a little prettier. There we go. I like that. Okay, so now I've got my little swirly fan going. And what about, let's put like a little fan thing up top. So if you see my original one, I had that little fan thing. So how did I do that? All right, so I'm going to take these guys and I'm going to duplicate them and let's merge them. So now it's just one fill. So if I turn all this off so you can see it, it's one fill, but I don't want it to be a fill. I want it to be a line. So I want to convert it over. So right here I have change element type. I'm going to go to walk and I just want to replace it. So I'm going to say replace. Now I have a walk and I can break it into its pieces by clicking on the wireframe point and saying split element at selected point. At selected point. Oops, I think I broke that at the wrong point. Yeah, it's all right. Okay, so now I've got my line up here, so I can change this to not sequin, decorative. And let's make that the fan. Yeah, that's cute. Okay, so then we can do maybe a satin stitch over here to make like a little scallop look. All right, so let's do that. We also had a question of someone wanting to see what my personal digitizing process is, so I figured if I do this one here, you'll at least see some. Okay, so there's one. I kind of like that. That's cute. So copy, paste, mirror. You'll notice I'm not paying a lot of attention to stitch order at the moment. Meaning, is this optimized for sewing at the moment? Absolutely not. But I do that. That's just my personal process. I like to get it looking good on the screen, and then I go back and rearrange it all and put it in the order and add travel stitches and other things like that to make it appropriate for actual sewing. So let's look up here. I'll do another satin stitch. Oh, there's a question. How am I doing that mirror? Okay, I'll go back and do it in just a minute. Let me finish this column. Cute. Okay, so the question was, how am I doing the mirror? So I'm going to turn that one on. All right, so you can either duplicate by right-clicking and go to duplicate. I just select it, and on the keyboard, I do a Control-C, which is copy, Control-V is paste. And then right down here, you see these little buttons at the bottom of the screen? That one is mirror horizontally. Then when I go to move it, if I hold my alternate key down, it locks it so it only moves horizontal, up or down. So I can then move it straight over and make sure it stays aligned. Okay. Cool. So we have that. So I also had like a little tassel thing here. So I'm going to do, that was a walk, decorative, and these 13-point stars are awesome. So I'm going to just draw like a little line. Good enough. All right. There we go. So it looks a little funny on the screen. I want them a little bit smaller. So I'm going to change this to 70%. When these go to sew out, they actually are like raised bubbles. They're awesome. I really like them. Can you tell? All right. So I did that. And then I can do the tassel. I'll show you that in a minute. So ignoring that, if I just go look at this guy and I say, all right, now how do I want this to sew out? Well, first off, I'm going to do this button right here, Update Auto Trim. Let's see where we stand. Okay. So I've got a whole bunch of trims in here. This is all one color and it's all touching. So there's really no reason to have that many trims in there. So you can see I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I don't know, too many. How about that? All right, so let's say I want to do all my fills first. So starting here, ending there, that's fine. My next one, let's see. My second one is this guy, way over there. Well, the white propeller shows me where my previous element ended, and the green circle and X are where this element is. All right, well, I'm going to do this one, then the middle, then that. So I need to rearrange them. I want this one to be second, so I'm going to left click and drag that up in my screen. And there's my third one. Okay, so I've got 1, 2, 3. And update the trim, you'll see I still have trims in there. And that's because my starts and stops. All right, so this guy, let's make him, oops, stop it. Yeah, sorry. There we go. I'm going to make him end over here. My next one, I'm going to make that one start here and end down here. And then this guy here, we're going to click on the insert start stop, start there, end here. Cool. Update the trims. All right, those three. Notice now they all sew without a trim. All right. Next we have this fan. Well, the fan has to start over here. It's a direction dependent decorative. So I got to get over there. How do I get over there? When I just ended right over here somewhere. All right. Well, first I'm going to move that. I'm going to take my decorative, copy and paste it, and just convert this over into a normal, which is, a normal stitch is just a walk stitch. So start there, end there. That just travels around, and now you'll see So it's just starting on the wrong spot because my end point needs to move down. Wee. Cool. I picked the wrong point. All right, so notice now it goes all the way through here without a trim. All right, so when you're going through your design, you just want to kind of think through the puzzle. How are you going to build it to minimize trims? Now, I've had people often ask me, why do you care? You know, the machine does the trims, so if I add 2 trims rather than 5 trims, what does it matter? Well, it's production time, right? So if you're making one of something, adding a minute of time to your project, okay, whatever, it's a minute, right? But if you're doing something and you're going to be running 1,000 production shirts, all right, 1,000, if you can save 2 minutes by optimizing the sew path, 1,000 times 2 minutes, that's 2,000 minutes. That's real time and money. So by taking that time and kind of thinking through it to minimize the number of trims, you can, increase your productivity, more profit, more money in your pocket, right? So that's kind of why it matters. When you're only doing 1 or 2, it's kind of a shrug your shoulder. Yeah, I can argue either way. Take the time and fix it, or just put in a trim, whatever. Okay. Any questions rather than me continuing this example? Unless you guys are having fun with that. I say Gina and Scott, you guys are having a conversation on YouTube. That's cool. I'll just leave that there because that's a lot. All right. Hat digitizing. The difference between shirt logo and art to sew on a hat. So I'll tell you personally, I always take my designs and make them for a hat, and then I put them on shirts. It doesn't hurt to sew a hat design on a shirt, but sewing a shirt design on a hat is generally a no-no. Why is that? Hats have fixed points on them, right? You've got the brim of a hat, which is rigid. You've got that, if the center panel of your hat has all that buckram and seams, it's rigid. So when you're sewing things and digitizing, it's always important to sew away from anchored points, away from things that can't move, which is why you sew away from the brim, so bottom to top and center out. That's why that kind of conventional wisdom comes in place with hat designs. Bottom to top, center out. Why? Because you're pushing away from things that can't go anywhere. If you sew from top to bottom, what are you going to do? You're going to be pushing that fabric down into the brim of the hat so that you'll end up with a bubble or not good things happen. Same with if you go towards the center, you're going to end up shoving your designs, and that push, the push effect of moving the fabric is going to now have nowhere to go. So that's why it's always bottom to top, center out. We do have a link on digitizing for hats that we put there for you, so check that out. But the real difference is, shirts, typically you can do however you want. You finish as you go. Good design practices, make sure your underlay is good, that you have appropriate settings for the material you're sewing on, things like that. But really, finishing as you go is good for both hats and shirts. Center out, bottom top, it doesn't hurt to do it that way for shirts as well. So, all right. Those were all the questions I had ahead of time. I'm quick scrolling through Facebook. I don't see any questions there, and I don't see any on YouTube. This went faster than I expected because there was a bunch of questions. So any other questions before we call it a day? Got 30 of you online. If you've got things you want to learn, let us know. You can put them in on the comments, send them to applications@melco.com. And I will be back again next week to see what questions you have. So have fun sewing, and hi, Brenda. I don't see any other questions, so I guess we're going to call it a day, and I will talk to you guys next week. Have a fantastic weekend, and have fun sewing. All right. Have a good one. Bye.